Welcome back to the Lucky 13 podcast, where we talk about all things people and profit in business. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Lantz.
And I'm the second host, Josh Hauser.
Josh, good to see you as well. We're living through a weird time, I think. You know, both of us are out with companies a lot. And, one of the things that I've just started to really sense inside of organizations as I talk to my clients' employees is kind of this just unknowing, this unsettled, that sort of thing. This isn't a political conversation at all, but there's just a lot changing, whether it's AI or whether it's tariffs and how that's going to impact companies, or political unrest, or, all of this
talent market conditions,
D&I and the changes there. There's just this feeling of just unsettled. Are you feeling that?
Yeah, I do. I sense it. And you got really two schools of thought. You got teams that are making the adjustment and quick, and if some are communicating really well, so people are braced for the turn, if you will. And then I got teams that are the opposite, not communicating, and some of their team members feel like they're going to fly off the boat. Yeah. But that can work the other side too, because there's probably some people that I notice in my companies that are bracing for a change, and that company has no intentions of it. Yeah. And so they're slowing down to brace rather than accelerate through what's going on. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, we did a podcast a while back. I remember bringing up this analogy of like you either playing offense or you're playing defense. It's either like all gas, no brakes, or it's, man, I'm flying the brake on, right? And there's no judgment as to which one you're doing with that. And I suppose business to business, it's going to be different based on, what headwinds you're potentially seeing. But
one of my clients said less straight roads, a little bit more windy, which means they got to use both feet for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Gas and brake, gas and brake, gas and brake. That, the way they describe it, it's a Formula One race versus a NASCAR race.
Yeah,
we're going to have to use the gas and brake, and we hit the straights, we take off, but we got to have some downforce and get through the turns rather than just do circles.
Yeah, and I just want to keep out in front of people too. Is I opened up LinkedIn again yesterday, and saw first 3 or 4 posts I saw were people being laid off and that sort of thing. And if that does not describe the situation you're in your business right now, where you're having to make some financial changes relative to that, be on the lookout for that opportunistic hire.
There is.
Because there are some really great people hitting the street. They just happen to be in certain industries that are being hit a little bit harder, or for whatever reason, their businesces are down.
Timing is going to hit some industries at different times. Yeah. It doesn't change the fact that the talent pool could be increasing, and you got to have your head on a swivel and look for them.
Yeah, certainly doing that. The other thing too that I think is really important, and I've seen some companies do this really well and some others, and I suspect you're the same, is how they're communicating with their employees and their team members. I think all business owners have to realize that we're taking in all of this information, and today, whatever might happen in Washington or whatever might happen in the marketplace or whatever is not probably going to significantly impact the security of our employment today.
Correct.
Right? But you've got employees that are sitting at home watching this.
Can't help but see
and
it.
They can't help but think, am I the next one to go? What's going on with our company? Are we healthy? Are we not? What's happening? What's not? And I just want to encourage people to keep an open line of communications with all their team members as to what's going on relative to your business. No matter how good it's going or how not it's going, trust your team members and help them have that psychological safety around what's going on in the business.
Yeah, I think I'm going to use this because we're right at March Madness. And I've said this before. The coaches that use their timeouts the most wise are the coaches that make it through. And you'll find some coaches plan their timeouts when they see their team starting to find that struggle, and they'll just slow everything down, get everybody back on the same page, just a quick timeout. Some people will say, we're on a run. I still want to call a timeout because we're on a blind spot right now, and I want to make sure everybody's aware. So if I'm a leader right now, I'm thinking about I need to use some timeouts for a little bit. I need to bring my teams together, some state of the companies, just quick timeouts, checkups from the neck ups, and make sure that we are all aligned on the same page.
Yeah. In the EOS model, there's the core value speech, right?
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes, at least the companies I've worked with who run on EOS, they give that core value speech once, then they tuck it into their binder and they don't give it again.
Minimum
and
once a quarter.
I think you got to do it once a quarter, and working in other topics into that core value speech too, as to where the organization's going and that sort of thing. So everybody can be, we call it organizational clarity, right?
Absolutely.
So everybody can be totally clear on where the organization's going and what is their role in helping the organization get there.
Correct. And I'll shameless plug for EOS. They've actually added an informal conversation in between those quarterlies, which is called the quarterly conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
And you do that 45 days in, and that speech comes up in that again. So think about 8 times a year that we get to get reset to. It's about our values and about our focus, and then how does my role fit into that long-term vision?
Yeah, it makes total sense. So we've been very open with our listeners since the beginning that we do this for fun. We hope we're bringing value, but at the same time, it's not how we get paid.
No.
And we have big families that we're trying to support.
Yeah, some reason they want to eat. They're so selfish.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And so sometimes there's little hiatuses that we have to go on for various things. My mom passed away in December, and we moved my dad to senior living, and I've been cleaning out his house. And candidly, I love you in this podcast. I love doing this with you, but it wasn't the highest priority at that moment in our life.
I understand.
So apologize to our listeners, but that is
I get it.
And so our schedules have been kind of bonkers.
Yep.
And so let's talk about time management.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we're really great at it, and sometimes we're not.
Yeah. And what's the old rule? If you don't control your calendar, somebody else will.
Yeah.
So how can you put some parameters around your calendar and control it? I'm getting this question so much from my CEOs and integrators or the leadership teams because they're just getting bombarded with opportunities. I don't want to make it sound like they're not opportunities, but how do I use the opportunities at the right framework and stay in rhythm, stay in, some people call it float. How do I stay in my float state? So we put some things together, and I thought maybe today we go through just a few. We got 9 ideas today. Let's just pull a couple of them out and see what happens.
Yeah, let's do that. So why don't you kick off with the Eisenhower Matrix?
Yeah, so Eisenhower is really about how do we determine the difference between urgent, not urgent, important, not important. It's just a quick matrix, and you guys have been around me enough to know matrix. So I'm going to walk through what I mean by that. So when it's important and urgent, so it's important, we got to get it done, and it has to be done in a short amount of time frame, similar to what we talked about a little bit ago. That is where we need to go to the do state of what we get done. And so that is quick IDS. We got to get to the IDS, get to the root cause. We have to actually get that on our to-do list for what we're going to do next. We got to have a set date that we're going to have that done, and that needs to happen in that framework. So if I'm thinking about I got 20 issues I'm working at, when I'm in that important and urgent, that's going to get moved up. And in the Eisenhower Matrix, you would literally plot that in that box. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
And so the second part is that we are going to have not important and urgent. And in my opinion, that's where you start to delegate. And this is Eisenhower, where you say, I'm going to delegate that out. I'm going to give that to either my integrator or I'm going to give that to a department lead. In EOS, we send the issue someplace else. Look, it's important, but it doesn't need to be get done right away. Let's let the team make that decision. Does that resonate to you?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And so just think about putting those issues on the list. The not urgent but important, it's important to get done, but it doesn't have to get done for a little bit. Well, let's make that onto our schedule, and let's actually put that on a time frame. So sometimes that'll be on a quarterly rock. Sometimes that'll be on your long-term issues list. I've seen a lot of teams use same page meetings for that. You know what? We don't need to discuss it with this much payroll in the room. Let's you and I, when we have breakfast on Thursday, I'll put it on our same page and let's work that out. Yeah. And then, of course, the last one, and this is my favorite, is when it's not urgent and not important, just delete it. Meaning, put it where it needs to be and get it out of your mind frame. Yeah. And if you can take your calendar with your issues list and place that on there on those time frames, when you're looking at meetings, this is an urgent time frame. I'm going to make sure I'm prepped. This one's not urgent. I can move that because I see a lot of EAs scheduling people over scheduling, and they're moving this urgent important is getting set 4 days from now because they got something that's not important and urgent that they're moving in the wrong spot. Yeah. Does that help you a little bit?
Yeah, makes total sense. So we've got a bunch we're going to go through today, like today and next week. Yeah. But do you use this one?
I use the urgent, not urgent most of the time. When I say urgent, it's about a timing thing. I think I probably use the bottom half without thinking about it. When I think urgent, I always think who has a unique ability to solve it first. I always go to, is this my solve or somebody else's solve? Yeah. And so I'm actually doing this not important without thinking about it. So I really would like to, now that we say this, I'd like to go through my last couple weeks of decision making and plot them in here and say, how many times did I say that I needed to give to somebody else, but I ended up doing it, or really worse, not doing it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Well, let me talk about the 3-3-3 method.
Please.
Okay. This method, I first learned this method through a previous leader, Dave Lindsay, who was the owner of Defenders. I don't know where he learned it. I have a feeling he probably learned this through Dan Sullivan and Strategic Coach.
Sounds like it.
But this guy, Dave, just a visionary, started a business in 1998 in the residential security space, grew it in 18 years to $750 million and sold it. Just really great visionary, really taught, ran a business focused on his people. But he used to walk around with a notebook and it was a little thin, like half-inch binder with the front cover ripped off. And you know why he had the front cover ripped off?
No idea.
Because he didn't want to take the time to actually open it.
Oh.
He wanted all of it. He didn't want to be able to have to open it to actually see his priorities.
He wanted everything right in front of him all the time.
And then he had basically this one list that was kind of his master dump list of just everything, right? And then every morning he would get up, he would grab a Post-it note, and he'd put it right in the middle of that notebook. And the notebook was always landscape. And he would look at the dump list, and he'd say, what are the most important 3 things I can get done today?
Love it.
And what it means is I'm not going home. I'm not doing anything else. I don't care if the building's burning down. I'm doing these 3 things first.
Love it.
And he would write it out, 1, 2, 3. And then as he would do them, he would check it off. And if he got through the 3rd thing by noon, he had a choice to make. He can go play golf, or he can grab the next most important thing.
Yeah.
And he was maniacal about it. There were times I would walk into his office. Hey, Dave, I need to talk to you about something. Sorry, I'm in the middle of my top 3. And a lot of people would think, well, that's not being a very good open leader and all that. But he was hyper focused on the concept of focused equals growth.
Yes.
Focus equals growth. And he was maniacal about it. And he demanded everybody to really operate in a very similar way. It was not all that uncommon where you'd run into him in the parking lot. You'd be walking in, and he's like, what are your top 3 for the day? And you should have already figured it out before you hit the office.
Or you don't decide when you walk in.
That's exactly right. Or at the end of the day, what were your top 3? Did you get them all done? No, I didn't get them done. Well, why are you leaving? Get back in there, get the number 3 done before you go home. I mean, absolutely. And it wasn't to for overworking.
It wasn't a micromanage.
It was like, let's just get really focused. And sometimes he might say, what are your top 3? And you tell me, he's like, really? Yeah. Like, you're a senior executive and those are your top 3 things? Like, it's just a way to like elevate.
Good chance to delegate some of that off and elevate your skill sets.
So the 3-3-3 methodology is you wake up every single day, you look at, and I use it on my phone.
Okay.
I use Task, which is a Microsoft app. And it's my dump list. Like if most of the time, if I'm talking to somebody and I'm pulling out my phone, I'm not doing a text. It's just something that person said triggered something with me that I need to go do, improve upon, look at, something like that. And I put it into Task, into my dump list. And then every evening, I then go and I look at my dump list and I say, what are the 3 things I got to get done tomorrow? And I put the due date as tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then when I wake up in the morning, I already know what my top 3 are, and I focus on those, and I don't focus on anything else.
It doesn't matter what else hits you during the day. Those 3 things are going to get done.
Those 3 things. And then if I get them done, then I got a choice to make. I can go to the next one, or I can go, I got the most important things done today. And a lot of people get this sense of accomplishment just by getting shit done, rather than getting the right shit done.
I love it. And
so that's an important way to do it. Then you can also, in the 3-3-3 methodology, the second 3 is what am I going to do for tomorrow? If you actually want to start thinking down the road, I don't do that.
Yeah.
I just focus on what are the 3 things for today, right? And then the third 3 stands for what can I delegate to other people? And so I do have another list that I've got my dump list, and then I have another list that is delegate to others.
Love it.
And so I might be looking at my dump list and say, all right, I don't need to be the one doing this. Let me delegate this to Kristen or to Chris or something like that.
Get these 3 off your plate and get them off your dump list. You know they have a home.
Yeah. So that was a big way to do it.
What I love about that is I just read this quote. Remember the transitive property in math? A equals B, B equals C, so A equals C?
Yeah.
The quote was simple equals clarity. Clarity equals kind, so simple equals kind.
Yeah.
And you're being kind to yourself and your organization when you just simplify and say, these are the 3 things. It's very clear. And the kind part becomes, I'm doing what's in the best interest for the company and myself at the same time.
Yeah.
That makes sense to you?
Yeah, and I think the best part of what I love about that is, of course, I love the best interest of you, but I love what's in the best interest of the company.
Oh, absolutely.
Because a lot of times our teammates and our employees don't get that me shutting the door and going heads down for 3 hours on the biggest problem that exists inside the company is actually the kindest thing I can do, rather than have my door open and be open to a conversation.
I can't tell
with everybody around me.
Absolutely. If you're not setting those barriers for yourself, you're being kind to everybody else, but not kind for the company.
Yeah.
And remember, we're in the charge. We're not in charge of. We're in the charge of. And sometimes we have to be in the charge of ourselves and shut that door. So I love it.
For sure.
Love it.
I'm going to flow into time blocking too, because I think these are really interrelated. To be honest with you, and these represent the 2 ways I do time management. So before I got to Defenders and learned about the 3-3-3 methodology, I did time blocking, and it all starts for me with what is my ideal week.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's not. I don't ask that question every single week. I take time out and I say, but I also don't set it and forget it for the rest of my life, because you go through different seasons.
Absolutely.
Like my ideal week during the summer is very different than my ideal week in the middle of January.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you sit down and you start with what are all the things I have to do?
Okay.
Okay. What are all the, and you think about your whole life, right? When I had 5 kids under 6,
Yeah.
there were things that were hitting that list that aren't hitting that list today.
Yeah. Your
right?
4 o'clock is different today.
100%. So you start with saying, what are all the things that I have to do in big macro buckets? So one might be prospect for new business. One might be one-on-ones with team members. One might be problem solving. One might be reviewing financials, whatever. What are those things you got to do every single week, right? And then you pull out a blank calendar and you start plotting and time blocking those things.
Yeah.
And one of them could be work on top 3.
Could be.
Right.
Very
That could
easy.
be one of the blocks. And that's why I like combining these two.
I love it.
So I have a perfect schedule that for my partners at my companies, they know what my perfect schedule is. And when I have time for certain things, and they try to understand that, and I encourage them to have those as well. And so if you look at my calendar, you look at one of my team members' calendars, you're going to see a lot of blocks that aren't available, but aren't meet with Josh.
Yeah.
It could be,
Work on
projects,
Yeah.
work on financials, whatever it is. And then you feather those top 3 in as well into that.
Yeah, I hear 2 things that are clear on that. Number one is it's like setting a doctor's appointment or dentist appointment. We honor those appointments. You have set that appointment for yourself or for the company, so you got to honor that appointment. It's got to be 80 to 90% that you're going to keep it. But 2, you're also now able to flip your brain. You're able to flip it to, okay, I'm now going to be in financial mode and I'm not getting interrupted. Or I'm going to be in one-on-one mode, and so I need to put on that coach's hat or that evaluator hat as I walk in. I find so many entrepreneurs are constantly changing hats on the hour rather than just setting that time and saying, this is what I'm going to do during that time. I might miss a sale, but I'll grow the short-term pains worth it at that point.
Yeah, I remember going through this with an executive one time, and I showed him my calendar, and he's like, that calendar makes me want to barf. Like, there's no flexibility in it. And I was like, there's tons of flexibility in it.
Decisions already made.
Because I already know what I'm doing next. I already know, I'm not stressed right now spending 2 hours doing podcasting with you, because I know I got time today for everything else I got to do.
Already planned it.
Like, I'm not even worried about it.
Yep.
Where if I didn't have that all planned out, I might be like, oh, I got all these things I got to get done, and I didn't schedule it into my calendar and all of that. And I might have that going on in the back of my mind and not be able to be fully present here. So it creates, for me anyway, it creates a tremendous amount of freedom. And because I know that I got time slots in my calendar for everything that's important to me.
Yeah, and I think about how many, this is what I see a lot when we're doing an EOS session. We take a break at the hour 15, hour and a half mark. Everybody goes to the phone and they find the problems, and all of a sudden the day's all ruined. Yeah. And I'm wondering, is this happening when you're not in an EOS session?
100%.
Every time you look at your phone, all of a sudden what you had time block has to change. I mean, even to the point of I don't look at my phone until after I get out of that block. I don't look, and just think of that, some of those simple disciplines. There was a guy named Alex Sheehan who said, because I said I would. And he would put that on top of his phone and said, I'm only going to focus on you for the next hour. And he would put that on his day. I'd say, Mike Lantz, because I said I would. And he put it on top of his phone. And then he would give that card to you at the end saying, I honored my commitment. Does that make sense? Yeah. Just to think about those little things, because we don't discipline ourselves on that. Yeah. And it's what you just described, and I know we're coming to the end, is what I see happen so often. Or the next email changes everything in the day. And yes, that's going to happen from time to time, unless I have time blocked to get that done.
Yeah, for sure. Well, why don't you bring us home with the ABCDE method?
ABC, it's really very similar to everything we talk about. It's all it is you got to come up with a framework for your team to know what is top priority and what's not. So ABCDE is, it's like DEFCON, it's like, rank it out. That's all it is. And so in this case, an A, that's what we got to put. We're, as leaders, we need to be in our A and B state all the time. That's where we spend our time, our money. That's the most urgent, most important, going to make the biggest difference on our people and profit. The C, D, and E, when you get your team taught what these letters stand for and you get the parameters and rails around it, what you start doing is you stop delegating because people absorb, that's a me problem, that's an us problem, that's a department problem. And so sometimes companies just need to clarify, and it takes a few coaching sessions, just let's make sure we understand the rank of a meeting. So you walk into an L10 and the IDS session has 21 on it, and they have no idea what A, B, C, D, or E are. So a lot of my companies are now either moving it with a number or an A, B, C, or D, just so when we get started, we at least have all the top ones up front. Yeah. Let's spend our time here. If we don't get to the other ones, we'll delegate those away. Yeah, and you could, like with issues, you could literally say, what's a priority one issue? Yeah. Let's define that. That means that if we don't solve this in the next 3 weeks,
we could have financial ruin.
So
Whatever.
The world we live in, if it's a people, profit, or process issue, it's a priority one.
Yeah.
If it's a broken process, it's affecting our profit, or it's going to harm or cause us to lose people, that moves to priority one.
I love it.
And so once you get that clarity, then priority two becomes even simpler.
Yeah.
Like this moves. Does that make sense?
And every organization can define it a little bit differently, however they want to define it. Yeah.
But once the organization speaks that, the Rosetta Stone's established, then you'll start finding you're only solving the issues you're supposed to, and everybody's solving the issues they're supposed to.
Yeah. Well, we'll go next episode. We'll go through some more of these. But and the most important thing I think is choose one.
Yeah.
Pick one that works for you and implement it and be disciplined about it, and also be kind of cool with the other people on your team maybe having a little bit different point of view on how they want to handle this.
Absolutely. And just make sure you have a clear understanding between each other. But if you don't control it, somebody else will.
For sure. All right. Awesome. Good stuff. We'll see you next week.